get confused when I see a clock that doesn't have the right time. My watch has the right time. Yeah, I know what time it is, but the clock doesn't. Well, I'll adjust. I just won't look over there. Okay, so this evening is very short and very sweet. This is one of the shortest presentations on. Um, Many of you are certainly familiar with Rupa Goswami's writing Nectar of Instruction. This is from there, and it's going to be a very simple rendering of a very basic teaching. Here's a little background. One time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri with some devotees, and Rupa Goswami happened to be with him. And he was, they were walking along the beach in Jagannath Puri, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered into a very ecstatic state and began speaking about bhakti. And the history tells us that Rupa Goswami, hearing what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, composed this literature. In other words, it's not, didn't have a recorder, but he had a receiver. And the receiver, the concluding verses of this text, Nectar of Instruction or Upadeshamrita, take us right to Vrindavan, take us to Radhakund, and all these nice descriptions of the most exalted place in the whole universe is Radhakund. Several verses. So one can only imagine what was the ecstatic mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the beginning parts are general instructions for everybody in the path of devotional service. And this is one of them. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote a book on this and its companion. I call it the Sixth and the Six. 6 factors that enhance bhakti. Shadbir Bhaktir Prasiddhyati. And this is 6 that Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashati. So just for a modern audience, 6 habits that destroy your peace and sanity or destroy your bhakti. In case there's someone here that is not so familiar with Rupa Goswami, there's a very beautiful painting of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And in the center are Rupa and Sanatan. And they're in the center because they're the most prominent. The eldest, Sanatan Goswami, and his younger brother, Rupa Goswami. One can say Sanatan Goswami was the senior most. One can say Rupa Goswami was the senior most. And in our disciplic line, we place Rupa Goswami as the next in line behind Lord Chaitanya. But Rupa Goswami being Rupa Goswami, he looked up to Sanatan Goswami not only as his elder brother, but his Shiksha Guru. He was very submissive to and obedient towards and affectionate towards his elder brother. And Sanatan Goswami, accepted the elder brother role. Both of them met for some time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before they became residents in Vrindavan. He sent them to Vrindavan with 2 main purposes: to write books according to teachings he had given to them, and to restore the places of Krishna's pastimes because they had been lost over time. And they fulfilled these instructions very nicely. Others continued after them as well. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila chapter 7, we have this nice metaphor of the Chaitanya tree. A little background is even during Lord Chaitanya's time, there wasn't they didn't have printing presses, they didn't have YouTube, and they didn't have the communication kinds of facilities that we have. And so there are different groups of persons hovering around different powerful teachers, Vaishnava teachers, that had different views on things. According to Chaitanya Charitamrita, even amongst the sons of Advaitacharya, there were different views of who was Lord Chaitanya and who was Advaitacharya and who was the topmost person. And in short, by this metaphor, Krishnadas Kaviraj manages to include everybody, at the same time place Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at the center. And not everyone had that view, because when he wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, how long was it before the Vaishnavas across the countryside had a copy? Because there were no printing presses. But in short, this metaphor serves to unite the different groups that were followers of different powerful acharyas into one tree. And as you see, their principal branches, the Panchatattva, the other four members of the Panchatattva, serving as principal branches and sub-branches, etc. And there you see the assistants gathering the fruits from this Chaitanya tree and distributing the fruits. So the distribution of the fruit was the fruit of love of God. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was expert in tasting the fruits and expert in distributing the fruits. And one of the principal recipients of that fruit of love of God was Rupa Goswami. Here's some quotes indicating Lord Chaitanya saying that he gave everything. He gave his full mercy to Rupa Goswami and empowered him to understand everything. Imagine. Imagine. Here's a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila chapter 19. This is a verse that's describing Lord Chaitanya's instructions to Rupa. The very first verse. Before the creation of this cosmic manifestation, the Lord enlightened the heart of Lord Brahma with the details of the creation and manifested the Vedic knowledge. In exactly the same way, the Lord, being anxious to revive the Vrindavan pastimes of Lord Krishna, impregnated the heart of Rupa Goswami with spiritual potency. By this potency, Srila Rupa Goswami could revive the activities of Krishna in Vrindavan, activities almost lost to memory. In this way, he, that's Lord Chaitanya, spread Krishna consciousness throughout the world. And one of his chief instruments for spreading Krishna consciousness throughout the world was and still is Rupa Goswami. Here's one of the glories of Rupa Goswami, found in Antya Lila, chapter 1, where it's twice in Madhya Lila and in Antya Lila, but Lord Chaitanya, during Sankirtan, would sometimes repeat a verse that sounded like a love song, a mundane love song between lover and beloved. And he was singing it again and again and again and again. And he was dancing and crying in ecstasy. And persons didn't understand. But Rupa Goswami understood. And so he wrote a companion verse to indicate it wasn't just a mundane love song, but it was Radha seeing Krishna and feeling separation from Krishna at Kurukshetra, wishing him to go back to Vrindavan. And when he placed this verse on a leaf and put it in the thatched roof of his little cottage when he went to take his midday bath, Lord Chaitanya came to see him. He wasn't there. He saw this leaf stuck in the roof. He pulled the leaf and read it and was amazed. He, Lord Chaitanya, was amazed that Rupa Goswami could understand his mood because no one else understood his mood. So later, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Swarup Damodar, how did he understand my mind? And Swarup Damodar said, I can understand that because he could understand your mind, you've given him your mercy, because otherwise it's not possible. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu confirms, I bestowed upon him my transcendental potency. Now you, Swarup Damodar, should also give him instructions, in particular, instruct him in transcendental mellows. There were two occasions where Lord Chaitanya confirms in Chaitanya Charitamrita that he gave his full mercy and to Rupa Goswami. Now, how much mercy is Lord Chaitanya's full mercy? He's the most munificent of all incarnations, and whatever that is, the fullness of his mercy he bestowed and empowered Rupa Goswami to understand it and to disseminate it. So he's like a live wire. He's a high voltage personality, Rupa Goswami. Here's something spoken by Bhakti Siddhanta about Rupa Goswami's writings. In 1933, at Srila Prabhupada's initiation, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati instructed him to study Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the law book of devotional service. When leaving this world in 1937, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati told his disciples, I advise you to preach the teachings of Rupa Raghunath with all energy and resource. Our ultimate goal should be to become the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Sanatana, Sri Rupa, and Raghunath Goswamis. During Prabhupada's time preparing to come to America, there's this little story. Because of time, I'm not going to go into. Well, there was an experience that Srila Prabhupada narrated to one of the officers at the Vrindavan Research Institute, Mr. Chobe, came and because he had affection for Prabhupada when he was living at Radha Damodar rooms and composing his Bhaktivedanta purports to first canto. And Prabhupada was feeling not fit, not qualified. It wasn't, it wasn't a false humility. It was his feeling about himself. And he then toward this story, it wasn't repeated many times, but this particular Mr. Chobe, Prabhupada informed him of, in the evening hours, 3 personalities came to him. And one of them was Rupa Goswami. And Rupa Goswami, knowing Srila Prabhupada's anxiety, said, Maharaj, don't worry about anything. Go ahead and travel to the West and preach. Just preach the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. You will be successful. I guarantee, because I will be right with you all the time. Now, he didn't boast about it. It was, at least to my knowledge, only disclosed one time. But he said there were 3 personalities, And he described what they looked like, and Sanatana Goswami was much taller. And behind was Bhugarba Goswami. Bhugarba Goswami's samadhi is also in that same courtyard with Rupa Goswami's bhajan kutir and samadhi. So Rupa Goswami has a very important role to play in our devotional lives. It's nice to remember him and pray to him and hear his teachings and let those teachings guide our lives. So Nectar of Instruction is one of those writings, very short, very important. And one of them is 6 qualities that will destroy your peace and sanity. So watch out for them. Atyahara is the first one. Atyahara means over-accumulation. And, we need their necessities of life. And we're, according to the Ishopanishad, Krishna, or the personality of Godhead, or Isha, makes arrangements for our necessities, and we should accept according to what our necessities are. But more than our necessity, according to Ishopanishad, is not good. And according to Rupa Goswami's writings, it destroys bhakti. Shadbir bhaktir vinashati. And the commentaries indicate 3 categories of what you can over-accumulate. One of those is stuff. And necessity is one thing, and over-accumulation of material things is an obstacle for bhakti. Overeating is another obstacle for bhakti. Prabhupada's teaching is undereating and overeating, not good. But better undereating than overeating. And at this age, this third one is a big problem. Over-accumulating information in the information age. Some persons have their spiritual lives destroyed by spending so much time doing what people do these days with technology and gathering information and information and information. Little story. Some years ago, maybe now 10 or 12 years ago, I'm not sure when, the government of India called for a conference, I guess, symposium or something, where the educators in India were called to Delhi to speak about education today. I was told, I wasn't there, that the keynote speaker said, education in India today can be summarized in 5 words. Information, 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 no transformation. And it's true. I mean, real education is formation of character. Real parenting is formation of character. Real leadership is formation of character. But in the information age, education is you learn information, you say it back, and you get an A in your exam, and you get into a good college, and you get a good job, and you earn lots of money because you can say back information. It's information technology time. Not character, but information. So from that, the government, at the end of this conference, offered money for persons organizations anybody who could develop curriculum for character development. And ISKCON got some of that government money because they call it value education. I'm sure you've heard these things. And it was in response to the information, no transformation. Because real character is Real education is character-based. Look in Bhagavad Gita. And what's the items of knowledge? It's qualities. Chapter 13, text 8 through 12, it's qualities, not information. Knowledge is not information accumulation. And sometimes we devotees read for the sake of gathering information. And then you have a nice big, I call it information basket, and you show off your information basket. Here's this information, here's this information, here's that information. I've got so much information. Tell me what you want, and I've got it in my information basket. I'd say it's it's an exaggeration to some degree, but it's describing a direction to some degree also. And really, what it's meant for is transformation. Twice I heard in different times Prabhupada narrated a story where he was visiting the home. He had, during some part of his household life, he was a successful businessman. He was visiting with another businessman. And on the occasion of his visit, the businessman was interviewing two men who were potential candidates for becoming managers of some, whatever it was, a factory or some division of his business. And both men came in, and Prabhupada described what that experience was. And then Prabhupada asked the businessman, which of the two candidates do you think is the likely one to be your manager? And he said, the first one. And Prabhupada asked why, because the second one had such an incredible resume, and he's so articulate, and this and that. He said, the first one didn't have the same resume and articulate and this and that, but he was smart, he was sharp, and I feel I could train him. And the second one, although this and that and the other thing, he was a little proud, and he didn't close the door. Because people that are cultured do things like when you enter, you knock before entering, and then you close the door when you come in. It's just a simple thing, but it's an indicator of culture and proper conduct and so forth. So those were the decision was made on that basis because the man had culture. He didn't have the same information, but he had potential. A man that can be someone that can be trained. So I found that very interesting. Prabhupada obviously gave the example because he wanted us to understand how to make progress in bhakti life. He wasn't telling us how to be successful in business. He's telling how to be successful in bhakti life. So over-accumulation of information or data can be an obstacle, or it can destroy your bhakti life. So that's the first, atyahara. The second one is over-endeavoring, or prayasa. Now, we spent some time yesterday with Shastrakrit and his interesting group of people describing the topic yesterday was, who is the doer? And Krishna has different things to say in Bhagavad Gita about who the doer is. And when you're trying to do something, it requires some effort or endeavor. It's one of the, in chapter 18 of Bhagavad Gita, it's one of the 5 factors of action. It's endeavor. So one has to make some endeavor to do anything. So what's over endeavor? Because that's detrimental. You have to make the endeavor, but what's over endeavor? Over endeavor is, in very simple terms, Prabhupada's message is you make your best effort and you leave the result up to Krishna. Now, in some cases, one might say Prabhupada was a little over the top with endeavor, like the the printing of Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's a celebrated story in ISKCON. And the BBT trustees were telling Prabhupada, what you're asking is mission impossible. And Prabhupada's reply was, impossible is a word in a fool's dictionary. He wanted mission impossible possible. And to do it, it was extreme. Or I heard directly from Guru Kripa, the effort that Prabhupada put to building the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. He had several hundred workers working in shifts, 24 hours until the construction was done because he wanted it completed. Guru Kripa told me a story that one of the first facilities they completed was Prabhupada's quarters, ground floor, quite simple for the construction people. And then the guest house was up above. So they're, bang, 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 bang all night long. You know what it's like in India, and you hear it. The whole walls shake. So Guru Kripa said that the Saurabhi was the person. Would you like the workers to stop while you're taking rest? He said, no, it's like kirtan. It should go on. He really wanted. So there's some exceptions with a devotional inspiration behind it of a unalloyed pure devotee. But for the most part, and from Rupa Goswami's teachings, we don't over endeavor. We make a reasonable endeavor, make a sincere, earnest, and honest endeavor. And we leave the results to Krishna. One of the barometers, because this question generally comes up after this topic, where's the line? And where the line is, one of the lines is you curtail your sadhana, or you just don't chant because you got some project or something that you're obsessively trying to do. When your spiritual core gets chipped away at, that's an over endeavor. So don't compromise your spiritual core. Build your spiritual core and don't compromise it once it's built. And then you make your best effort, whatever that is. And who can say, I gave it my best effort? Well, it's, is there ever a time when we can say, I couldn't have done anything more? There's always something we can do more. So it's never like that, but just a reasonable effort that you stay, your core sadhana doesn't get compromised. And the value that you have in the relationships, like your family members. Sometimes it happens in some places where whatever the activity that's drawing energy from a family needs become compromised. And instead, there's an over endeavor thing going on over there or over there. Now, if there's some emergency, that's an emergency. And then after the emergency subsides, you get back to plan A. If the building's on fire, you take care of the fire. When there's an emergency, you take care of the emergency. But then as soon as possible, you get back to plan A. So that's a cause or factor that destroys bhakti, over endeavoring. For some, Prabhupada adds the terminology for something mundane, something temporary, limited. We have to do things dealing with this world. We don't over endeavor. It destroys bhakti. So that's two, adyahara and prayasa. And the third is mundane speech. Now, we don't say monavrata, but we say speak about Krishna. And there is a tendency, because we're involved in the material atmosphere, to speak about things that have nothing to do with anything permanent or long lasting. So mundane speech. is something prajalpa, or another term that it is used in the scripture is gramya katha, village talk, just blah, blah, blah stuff. No, there's a place for social niceties, and behind the social niceties, or the purpose of such social niceties is to invest in relationships where you indicate you care about the person. How's the family? How's the health? How are the kids? And all that, conventional talk. But when it gets too much, then it's in the prajalpa category. And I think we all have experience of what that is, and we should know when that starts to happen. It has a detrimental effect for our devotional lives. So there's three. We're halfway done. Over accumulating, over endeavoring, mundane speech. Then comes an interesting one, niyama agraha, and there's niyama agraha. So niyama agraha is doing things without any sense of why you're doing things, mindlessly doing things, or mechanical life, including in bhakti, doing things without knowing why. Just, ritualistic or mechanical doing something. It's important to be mindful, this popular buzzword, mindfulness. So be mindful about what you're doing. And if you don't know what, it's like my understanding of younger generation people today ask the why question a lot. Some of you have children, and some of you have children that ask why. When you say something, they want to know. That's not bad. It's not defiant. But once they understand, then it's good to do. Not just forever saying why and why and why. I know some children that say why endlessly. I know some other ones that say no endlessly. But doing things without knowing why they're to be done. One of the things that I appreciated very much about reading Prabhupada's books, perhaps you would be, interested to hear. I certainly didn't grow up with a Vedic or Vaishnav tradition. I grew up with something else. But that something else that I grew up with didn't answer a lot of questions, because I had why questions, and I didn't get answers. I had what questions, I didn't get answers also. But when I read Prabhupada's books, this is my appreciation. Even at that time, Prabhupada knew his audience, and the audience were Western influenced people, and Western influenced people were encouraged to challenge status quo stuff, look for better answers than the previous generation. It was just the way of life of our younger generation. So Prabhupada knew and did the process of education itself. We were asking why questions. So he didn't always give the why question, but he gave the answers. In reading commentaries by our acharyas, they did something quite similar. Not exactly, but something similar. They would, deal with the opponent would say, the Purva Paksha person would say, why this? What about that? And wait a minute, the opponent would say, and then they would address. So asking why questions doesn't necessarily mean there's opposition. It's just wanting to know. Wanting to know is good. And leading a mechanical life, niyama agraha, is doing the rituals, following the niyamas without knowing why you're following the niyamas. And then there's the other. Niyama agraha is um, rejecting wisdom whimsically. So I just, no, thank you. I'm going to do things my own way and just rejecting standards whimsically. So that's now 4 of 6. Pay attention because we're almost done. Niyamagraha. And then Jana Sangha. Jana Sangha is a really important one because in the things to be done and the things not to be done, it appears in both lists. Means it's, association is very important. In this case, Jana Sangha is materialistic association. And materialistic association, especially valuable for householders, is to understand this properly. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a householder, as you know, and he wrote in a way that he would give instructions for the renunciates and its instructions for the householders when he comments on this in his books. In more than one place, he comments on this very point. Materialistic, because association is so important. And it's similar. There's conventional kinds of association. Hello, how are you? How are the kids? How's the family? Is everyone doing well with the COVID situation? Did you get your inoculation yet? And all those kinds of things that people ask. But specifically the association, there's an interesting description, and I'm going to ask Kripamoya Prabhu from the UK if he can provide me with this list. There's stages of association that start with something that's innocent like this, and then there's degrees of association, and then there's the confidential association. When you have someone who you reveal your heart to, you seek advice from, or even stronger, you seek guidance from. And materialistic association is where you have those close kinds of dealings with worldly people, and there's no discrimination about what you hear from them about important matters of importance to them, like money and things that money can buy, and car and home and this and that and investments. And when people come together, it's just like when people go to a religious gathering, commonly at our temples, and the arti is over and the class is over and it's prasadam time, and immediately where does conversation go? Even where it's devotees, beside the prajalpa, it's just let conversation go to spiritually elevating topics as far as possible. Um, yeah, and materialistic people, because you have to go. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes, you go to work. How are you going to avoid the materialistic people at work? You can't just like build a wall around yourself or a bubble or something. But it means specifically not confidentially or intimately associating with them. That is, the confidential and intimate association is with those who are bhaktas, those who are carrying bhakti in their heart, and those that are cherishing the bhakti in their heart. Those are the confidential dealings that there may be few compared to the totality of people in the world. But if you're going to associate with such people, then you try to give them bhakti to some degree, and that's your protection. At least if you have the desire, you're in the workplace, and there's materialistic people around you, and you have a desire to be Krishna's instrument to give bhakti to people. And just having that desire, that's protection. Okay, so that's the Jana Sangha topic. And this is our last slide, is laulyam, greed. It's a nice image. Um, I'm sure you know these statistics. There's lots of these statistics that the degree to which the American population compared to other parts of the world is another thing. But the American if everybody in the world lived at the standard of using resources of Earth the way that Americans do today, it would require 2.5 Earths. And the problem is there's only one. And so those that have are exploiting the Earth, and those that don't have are deprived of their deserve. And so it's very problematic for Mother Earth, and it's very problematic for the people that are doing the exploiting because it destroys their bhakti. And those that don't have, they become envious and then do things to get what their deserve is, etc. It adds just the difficulties of Kali Yuga, the complications of materialistic life. Now, greed has its place in bhakti life, and the greed in bhakti life is greedy for our relationship with Krishna. That's another part of Rupa Goswami's teachings. It's a qualification for entering into Krishna Loka. Is the greed to get into the intense desire. Greed is desire something, and greed is like over the top desire for something. So there's spiritual greed. That's good, properly administered, of course. And the material greed is it's an obstacle, or according to the topic, it's habit that can destroy your peace or sanity. So that's it. I told you at the beginning it's going to be one of the shorter classes, and I've got an early departure tomorrow, so I can stay for a while and have some discussion. I'm happy, but it'll allow me to get back and take rest and get up early and start my early morning tomorrow. Going to California tomorrow. It's a long flight. It's a long flight. It's a long flight. 4.5, 4 hours and 50 minutes, something like that. So let's have some discussion. Oh, go ahead, Shambhihari. You got the mic.
I just had a comment, Maharaj, that all these six habits.
Mask. You take the mask down so I can hear you better.
All these six habits.
Yeah.
If used spiritually, they are good.
They look good?
Is that my wrong understanding? If they are all used in the spiritual aspect, they are good.
They have their place.
They have their
but
place.
Prajalpa, over endeavor doesn't have its place. Well, over endeavor, if you like Prabhupada wants something, then you do. But even ordinarily, over endeavoring is not good. It's exceptional. Prajalpa has no place. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Can you elaborate into the over endeavoring versus the greed? What is the main difference there?
Where's the line?
Over endeavor.
What's your question, though?
The question is how we can differentiate over endeavors versus the greeding.
One criterion: you don't compromise your core sadhana. Let's say it the other way. On the strength of core sadhana, you make some endeavor, spiritual endeavor. But I gave two criterion. You compromise your core sadhana, that's over endeavor. And people do that sometimes. Now, and sometimes there may be necessity. Sometimes, occasionally, rarely, supposing at work there's a deadline. You may want to decrease your sleep, but not decrease your core sadhana. And you can't do that forever because the body requires, but you don't compromise your core sadhana. And sometimes you may even, if it's extended, but then you get back to plan A. So over in that one standard, I think this is what you're asking.
Yeah. I'm trying to understand that over endeavor is I'm working so hard to accommodate my wealth or my money thing. That is my thing is if I'm keep on doing extra efforts, putting extra effort more than what I need, right?
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing you mentioned in one of the slide is the greediness. Is that the greed is the same as my over
Oh,
endeavor?
I see. That's your question.
That's the my question. Like, what is the main?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not necessarily. It's not necessarily the same. It can be, overlapping. But supposing, um, there's many supposings. I mean, thinking of charity. I'm a householder. I've got a job, and I'm earning X, or I'm earning 3X, and my needs are X to keep my family and things stable. My needs are X, and I'm earning 3X. But I just keep hoarding the 2X more than the X and putting it somewhere and looking at it. The miser that's enjoying, so he's got more than what he needs. Or here's another one, and it just has something to do with accumulation. But I've got 16 pairs of shoes. That's an over-accumulation, but it's the overlap is there more with greed than necessarily over-endeavoring. Because I've got this surplus funds. I'm not being charitable as a householder should be. I'm just accumulating. It's never enough. I got to have more and got to have more and got to have more. So my level, there is some overlap where it can be over endeavoring, overlaps with greed.
Yeah. Can I ask another
Yeah,
question?
sure.
Okay. Again, the
It can
endeavor.
overlap with overeating too.
That's correct. But endeavor over endeavor, I'm thinking that I'm endeavors. Like
Yes.
because
Yes.
the thing I will give you one example. Like I think most of us, I'm from the India, and we were doing like good job there, but we get the job over here so that I will earn more money, so that I can accumulate more. So after we will progress after years and years, I think I'm in that same bracket. I'm doing that mistake, but my consciousness is if I have more, maybe I can serve better
Yeah.
in that consciousness. Maybe I can dovetail my thing, whatever
Sure.
I have extra, right?
Right.
So that endeavor is not in terms of greediness, but still I want to thinking that my over endeavor is for dovetailing for some service.
But practical, does it really happen? You
This
follow what I'm
depends.
asking?
Yeah. No, but,
The mindset is that I'll be more in a position I
right.
can be in, I
That is
can
a
be
challenge,
charitable.
right, Maharaj?
So what, not only percentage, but even amount, am I being more charitable? My experience as a sannyasi is poorer people are often more charitable than wealthy people.
I agree, Maharaj. I completely agree with that one. But out of the 6 and 7 points, that is the one clicking is, I think I'm fall in that category. Rest of them, I think is controllable or maybe
There's no
manageable.
harm
Yeah.
that you're living in America and earning a nice livelihood. And there's no harm that you have a nice house like this. The essence then is dedicate the house to Krishna service. And if that gets compromised, then it's an over endeavor.
Makes
And
sense.
then whatever is that surplus, here's a principle for this is me speaking. I'm a sannyasi, but for grahastas also, my advice would be before you spend money on stuff, this is the over endeavoring, the over collecting. Do I really need it? And ask yourself that for a stretch of time, not just once. Do I really need it? Do I really need it? And if you time, I don't have it, and I'm just fine. Okay, I don't really need it. How many mobile phones and iPads do people need, or readers, or you know what I mean? So And it goes on. So if I need it, okay, then get a good one, because then I can use it in Krishna's service. And then your consciousness is, it's not exploiting, it's utilizing in Krishna's service. And when you find that you no longer are using that thing that at one time you thought you needed and you used it, you give it away to a person that doesn't have one or doesn't have 10 like I have or whatever. So the charitable position helps protect the householder from these over this and over that's. And and utilizing things in the consciousness that is for Krishna, not just a notional idea. I can do more if I have more. It's a consciousness factor, and there are wealthy people that do more because they have more, and there's more people that have more and they don't do. Although that was maybe something in the back of their mind. And it's good that you're speaking like this, because it's self-honesty. This was one of the other considerations that we talked about in an earlier class, being self-reflective, and having some person who you can take feedback from, and they can say tough stuff to you, and you take it because they're well-wishers. It's good to have such people that you're in some relationship with. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. You're on.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful class and valuable inputs. My question is, if we don't associate with material people, I mean, the people who are not devotees yet, and if we don't speak their language initially, how can we give Krishna conscious? We have to give them slowly, right?
Speak their language, give association, don't take association.
Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, you go. This is my metaphor, visual. Build a bridge, go on the other side of the bridge and hang out with them on the other side of the bridge. So find out what's important to them, and engage with them in that which is important to them for the purpose of sharing Krishna bhakti. And then when they feel comfortable with you're a person that you care about them, etc., 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 you have an idea of their interest, and you're providing some resources that help them with their interest, especially ones that have a Krishna conscious perspective to it. And then you point to the bridge. You want to take some steps going on that bridge and see where that one goes. And that they'll go with you if there's a relationship where they feel that you've understood them and you care about them, and you're interested in them, and you're also interested in their higher welfare, and they understand you're a good person. So there is some of that, and there's risk involved if you do that. And if one is not aware of the risk, then you can get drawn into the material energy by that unwholesome. So it's giving Lord Chaitanya, be an instrument of Lord Chaitanya in that situation, giving Lord Chaitanya's mercy. And you have to have some spiritual strength, or have your spiritual inoculation. That's Prabhupada's example. Before a doctor goes into a diseased place, he takes an inoculation because he doesn't want to contract the disease going into the diseased place. So our inoculation is our hearing and chanting. And the conviction, when there is sufficient conviction that we can share Krishna bhakti with others, even you do it in an appropriate way, not in a pushy way or I'm up there and you're down there kind of way, but sharing. And there's risks.
Thank you.
There's risks not to also.
Thank Thank you, Maharaj, for a wonderful class. I learned a lot. Maharaj, I have two questions. One, if you can please elaborate a little bit on spiritual greed.
On
Spiritual greed.
spiritual greed.
And
But before you go to the second one.
second one is a little bit
Be-
follow-up
before-
of Maharaj.
Before you go to the second one, let me do the first one, because I'll get lost. It's elevated. We're not there. We're not ready for spiritual greed yet. So let us prepare ourselves to become qualified for spiritual greed. That's a starting point. But for those who are elevated, there's not just salvationist idea, like this place is crazy, I want out of here. Let me go to the nice place, to the Vaikuntha place where there's no anxiety. It's not like that, but where a relationship with Krishna becomes consuming in your consciousness, pervasive in your consciousness. When that stage comes, not just salvationist, liberationist, but relationship with Krishna, consciousness awakens. We're not there yet. So to get there, that relationship with Krishna aspiration needs to amplify. And that's what spiritual greed is. And when that spiritual greed dials up, the material greed not just dials down, but it's gone. It's replaced. And that's the healthy condition. And that's according to Rupa Goswami, that's the requirement, the prerequisite for entering into the spiritual association of Krishna, is that greed for that opportunity to be with Krishna. And we find that in elevated devotees. They're patient. They're not just enthusiastic, they're greedy. And they're patient, but they're very enthusiastic, extremely enthusiastic. They're greedy. That's a spiritually advanced position. Okay?
Can I ask
Yeah.
follow-up on that?
Yeah.
So when you say they are greedy about their relationship with Krishna, or the greedy about preaching,
About
or
second one?
preaching,
Printing?
like preaching, the enthusiastic about preaching, giving Krishna to others, or
There's different, yes, but there's different consciousness behind preaching. Some is fruitive, some is egotistical, and some is, I'm just an instrument. And because I'm finding happiness because it's bringing happiness to Krishna and Lord Chaitanya. So there's different kinds of preaching. There are different consciousnesses behind the one who's giving, reaching out to others. And the quality reflects on how that impacts people's hearts. And as well the fruits. Meaning, if there's someone who's an aggressive type, they'll attract people who are aggressive types, or people who are passive types, and not necessarily people who are very thoughtful. So the consciousness behind is important, and the inner satisfaction is also determined by the consciousness behind the reaching. So back to the greed question. If one is doing that activity for the happiness of Krishna, that's spiritual greed in preaching. My sense is that was Prabhupada. By listening to his lectures, for so many years, it's in almost every lecture, and many lectures, it's there like multiple times. He just didn't want to see people suffer. He had a mission, the instruction of a spiritual master, but he also had compassion. He didn't want to see, and he was driven, not by passion, but by compassion, to sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice. And obviously there was happiness in it, but the happiness was the giving. And sometimes he was funny, and sometimes he was heavy, and sometimes he was soft. Sometimes he was very grave, but always that compassion. And it was joyful for him. It was joyful for those to be around him, and energizing, because of the quality of his empowerment empowered others just to be around him. Or even if some of us didn't have much but physical association, but just hearing his lectures and reading his books, that was it.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Maharaj, I had a follow-up question with Prabhu. Is that okay? So, sometime my both the children are being homeschooled.
Good.
So, sometime during the weekdays, I take them to the neighbors' places to play.
You take them where?
Neighborhood to play.
Okay.
To play their own age group children. And it so happens that people sit down and they do prajalpa. There are a lot of times I have earphones in my hand. Sometimes I have a mask on and I try to chant, whatever. But there are times when I have no choice but to sit there and be a part, even though I'm not talking. I'm not talking prajalpa, but even their hearing sometimes does affect little consciousness. But then I pray Krishna that they need to play 30 minutes, 45 minutes with their physical play, and then. So if you can guide a little bit that.
Yeah. Parenting. It's different for different parents. It's different for different children. It's different at different ages. At some point, how much can you put them in an incubation chamber and they're not exposed to anything toxic? At some point, that incubation chamber is going to be breached and they're going to be in the toxicity. So, as a parent, how do you manage that? That's it. Different parents is different, different kids is different ages is different. There's different approaches. So I would, my thought is kids need to have other kids to be with and play. That's why you do it, because you need some play time, right? They need it. It's a need. If they're not, they're feeling suffocated or deprived or whatever. They need to play. So as a parent, most important, whether it's you do it this way, that way, or the other way, the core values are the core values. And, it's this character development. As a parent, that's the main thing. Because they're going to be exposed sooner or later. So you don't overload and you don't the protection is the core values. So they know why we do certain things and why we don't do certain things. And then each child or each person is going to have their psychophysical nature. Some children or some people are just more attracted to that stuff, the prajalpa stuff. Some are just not. Just not. And, what are you going to do if they are? How can you overly protect if they're not? So that's the parenting endless topic. The values, the character that you try to carry and pass on by your character, not like arm twisting or something, just by your own character. That's the protection. And they understand, they look up to the person who they're receiving character from, and they feel protected by that. That's the best parenting model. And then, again, some children are going to say yes, and some are going to say no, and some are going to say, let me think about it. Because they're making decisions as children even. And you can't make an endless incubation chamber for them. So you're concerned, but my idea of my advice is just keep the character development channel open, and when things come up, they understand. Because I've had kids tell me, I don't like it when they start talking stuff. I'm just like, I'm not interested. So what do I do? And if that because that's the channel that they're on, and they're trying to manage that, and, so if the relationship between the parent and the child is open, the communication flow is really nice, then without putting your hand on their steering wheel, you can help them understand. Here's some choices. Which ones do you like? I like that one. Okay, good. I can support you on that one. And then you're a team. You and the child are a team, and you're helping them go. Learn how to navigate, because at some point you're not around, and they're going to find out what's around, and they're going to make choices. So at some point, they're going to have to make some choices about what they're attracted to and what they're going to cringe from, and just completely stay away from, depending upon their character.
Yes, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, along with them, when I'm sitting with the neighbors, because they are playing.
That's what I thought you were speaking about, first
Yeah.
of all. You,
No,
not
but
the kids.
that's very, I got so much wonderful information, and I'm going to meditate on this, what you just said. And my consciousness, when I'm sitting with materialistic people, at that point in time, also I'm thinking not to instruct the faithless people about chanting the holy name or talking too much about Krishna. But then at the same time, sometimes my consciousness is affected. So how do I bring that protective covering around me, that I'm not able to give my full association to others, but at the same time, I don't want to take their association.
I mean, you're an adult, so you know the answer, and it's not easy. Minimal. You're Krishna's instrument. You're sitting in some situation where you're with materialistic people, and you're Krishna's instrument. And if you just don't lose that consciousness, you're praying to Krishna. Say, men at work, praying to Krishna, please use me as your instrument. And if you have that openness of heart, Krishna will send the opportunity. And, maybe not instantly, but Krishna will send opportunities in due course of time. And then in between, and then you can be, titrate the Krishna bhakti depending upon the person. And then you have a little relationship, and you cultivate those relationships more than the other ones. And the other ones, there's different things you can do. You can think of the conversations going on according to the modes of nature. Oh, there's the mode of passion. Oh, there's the mode of ignorance. Oh, there's the mode of goodness. Oh, there's intelligence that's not properly directed. You just you see as Krishna sees, with detachment. You're getting the education of how the material energy flows in people's lives. Your daughter's a little less attentive this evening than she was the other day. Anyway, differences at different times. Okay. But and by all means, just like your children having character, I'm Krishna. I am who am I? I am a tiny living entity meant for Krishna's service. So here I am in this situation. I'm an instrument of Krishna's service. I'm meant for Krishna's service. How to best serve Krishna. And you're going to have stronger exchanges with persons that are more spiritually inclined and more cordial relations, but remaining formal with people that are more materially inclined. And some people you're just going to not be around. They'll know that, and you're no fun because you don't talk about the stuff that they're interested in and do the stuff and eat the stuff and drink the stuff that they're interested in. That's just so you have a warm relationship over there. We have something over here.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So in the beginning stages of spiritual life, so when we come to Krishna consciousness newly, so we'll have this process of like four regulative principles.
Process of?
Four regulative principles, chanting 16 rounds and then attending classes, all that. Right?
Yeah.
So when we are doing
things.
that, and then when we are hearing a lot of lectures from different Prabhujis and Maharajas, so a lot of times I encounter people where, devotees where they are like very intelligent, very organized, kind of little aggressive also in their preaching or in their methods or maybe in their endeavor or whatever. But a lot of times, like I don't like that their way of preaching because it doesn't sync with me. But I like few devotees where they are like I like their approach basically.
You're a human being.
Yeah. So my question, Maharaj, is like, is it okay to distance ourselves from the devotees whose methods are not we don't like without offending them or without disrespecting them?
Yeah, it's okay. Yes, don't externally or internally disrespect. At the same time, preferences are completely natural. This resonates more with me, that resonates less with me. So internally and externally, I'm not going to disrespect a Vaishnav because there's bhakti in their heart. And some exhibit their bhakti this way, some exhibit their bhakti that way. And this is more, this resonates more with me, so you spend more time over where it resonates more with you. It's just natural. The caution is don't be disrespectful, externally or internally. We're going to go online. Yeah?
Yes, there's just two questions actually.
Okay.
By Santoshi Mataji. Back home, my parents chant Vishnu Sahasranama every day.
Good.
So do all holy names of the Lord carry the same potency as Mahamantra?
No.
Also, do the holy names grant liberation only when they're chanted for that purpose?
No. They grant liberation whether that's your purpose or not.
Her parents don't chant for material desires, but at the same time they're not asking for liberation either. They just do it as a habit. So
it's a nice habit. I wish more people had such habit. It'd be a better world.
The second question is, in the competitive world we live in, how do we not perceive the mode of goodness as being complacent? How do we strive to compete without being in the mode of passion?
Well, we don't strive to compete. For starters, we strive to please Krishna. At least material conditioning is you strive to compete. That's passion. And we're trying to come to the stage where it's service to Krishna instead of passion. So, you're in the corporate atmosphere and you're learning Krishna Bhakti and you want to orient yourself towards Krishna Bhakti. Great. So you work in the workplace in such a way that you're not just getting by, you're not just going the other direction where you're trying to one-up the other person or something like that. You're Krishna's servant to the workplace. You're Krishna's servant to the workplace. And so you perform your duties as they're to be performed. You make your best effort to do it nicely because you're Krishna's servant. And the people, here's an important thing. Whether it's in the workplace or your kids in school, or I'm especially familiar with college outreach. One of the rules of college outreach is if somebody's going to be an officer, they have to be really good in academics. And the reason is the other kids see, oh, they're really goofy. They don't do well in their academics. I'm not going to take part in this. If they see they're doing really well in their academics, this is good. I'm going to check this out. I want to do well in my academics. So it's same in the workplace. You know, if you're a Krishna Bhakta, you may not be, dancing on your desk or something, or playing loud kirtan at your workstation, but they'll know in course of time that you're a Krishna Bhakta, and how you perform is going to reflect on Krishna Bhakti. So you want them to think nicely about Krishna Bhakti, and you want them to receive Krishna Bhakti, but they'll be allergic to it if you don't do well. So you do well for Krishna to help bring people to Krishna's service. I mean, there's other ways of thinking of doing well. That's one of them. So we don't compete. We try to do it nicely for Krishna's pleasure and in Krishna's service in different ways. And the results are up to Krishna. We make our best effort. That's this over-endeavor topic again. So I think I'm going to end because it's 8:30. And I've got an early departure tomorrow, so you'll be kind upon me and go ahead.
Maharaj, I want to take this opportunity to thank you from the bottom of our hearts, from all the devotees in Atlanta for this 1 week. We don't know how fast it passed away.
Yeah, it went fast.
And we're sad to see that the day has come when you'll be leaving us. It seems like just yesterday when you came, and it seems like it was like a rain shower in a desert. So we're hoping that you'll come back soon, sooner than soon, so that we get your association again. And if we have in any way done anything that was kind of offensive or not pleasing to you, we beg at your lotus feet to please forgive us. But there was no intention whatsoever. Thank you so much, Maharaj.
And thank you for your robust attention. They're participating, coming, listening. Your good listening group. Let's see what happens with the plan of Krishna's schedule. I plan to come back in the area for just 3 days for college outreach, because in the month of September, that's college time. So let's see what happens, because there's the pandemic thing, or COVID is spiking again. Let's see what happens.
If you do come back, please keep 1 day for us, just one.
Let's see. It may happen like that. It may be that the college classes will be done virtually, and so then I'll do it from somebody's home, and just the audience is the college group, and you'll see what it's like to interact with the college group. Let's see what happens.
One other request, Maharaj. We had a marriage ceremony yesterday, and the newly wedded couple are here. They would like to get your blessings. There was a marriage yesterday. Yeah.